First of all, pleasure to be here. Apologies on behalf of John Marcus, he couldn't be here. This is not the first time I stand in on ad hoc basis, so it has a habit of happening, but it's all good. I wanted to share a couple of observations that we have from the market with you today, and perhaps that stimulates some thoughts in your minds, and we can have a conversation afterwards as well. Thesis is AI is here. Where are you? And I'm going to give you a perspective from industrial operations. It's not unique to power, it's not unique to oil and gas, it's actually quite cross-vertical. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Cognite. I think some of you may know what we do already or who we are. Our business growth is currently about 95% outside of Norway, has been for years. Vast amount of our business is outside of Norway, has been for years. It's North America, Japan, Middle East, Southeast Asia, all of the European region, and of course Nordics as well. My name is Petteri Vainikka. Apologies, I didn't include my name anywhere. First name, last name at cognite.com is my email address. President EMEA. I've been with the company now for, this is my 8th year with Cognite, so I've been on the journey and the ride for quite a good time. So with that, AI is here. Let's zoom out first. So AI is not exactly groundbreaking new anymore. This is a very simplified, trivialized timeline. We start with ChatGPT that broke loose and really breached the consensus and the common understanding a good while ago, November 22 roughly, really started bubbling up into the early 23. By summer 23, people were really experimenting and trying it out. That's the consumer side. You know, folks were playing around, toying around. Agentic hype kicked in a bit later, the second part of 23 into 24, bleeding into 24. MCPs, so kicked in late 24, 25, all the rage. We have Claude Code Opus 1s now in 26. And the most recent is the OpenClaw transformation, where in China people were queuing up to get a Lobster installed on their phone so they could install their personal private OpenClaw system on their phones. In China, everything is mobile, of course. About Cognite, what we do, we try to simplify our existence externally and internally as well. So this is our internal mantra, which we also use from time to time externally. We're all about creating value for our customers. We sometimes get accused, rightfully so, for dealing with complicated technology few people understand. It's very geeky, very techy, and yes, it's an engineering-heavy company, so guilty of that as well. But our moonshot is quite simple. We are here to deliver $100 billion of quantified economic value to our customers by 2035. In full clarity and transparency, we're way off that number. We're currently around the 1 billion, so 1% done. There's a long way to go. Zooming out of us, looking at the market, and I'll show some data that's not ours. It's MIT, it's McKinsey, it's Gartner, it's S&P Global. Only 6% of organizations who have invested in AI over the last year or two have or are able to report meaningful EBITDA impact from AI. That's a very low single-digit number. Doesn't correlate with investments. A lot of money is being poured in, but very few can say quantifiable economic value. It's not the only one. You have similar statistics coming out from almost every research institution, every analyst company, everyone tracking the field. Most projects are abandoned after POC. They fail, the pilots fail to demonstrate value. There's no point continuing. Or you abandon the project due to poor data quality very early on or midstream. At the same time, we're kind of here. And we see this. There's a divide emerging. There are those companies, and I know the 95% or 6% succeeding, which means almost 95% are not, is quite daunting. But there's a divide emerging. It's growing. AI-ready organizations and those who are not, many decide to not be. There's a lot of companies who still decide to wait and see, which is perfectly fine. It's an option people have. I'm not going to go into the details of what constitutes Class A and Class B. I'd like to highlight one thing is, and again, there's a lot of skepticism to AI as well, and the data just shown, of course, validates skepticism. Only a few percentage points are realizing actual monetary value from their AI investments. The biggest risk, I think, is, however, not that AI fails. That's not the biggest risk. Also, there's so much money being invested into AI by the biggest hyperscalers and everyone in the AI race that there's so much momentum, like it's going to happen by brute force. It can't be allowed to fail. The biggest risk you have is that it does work, but just not inside your organization. So it's going to work in your competitor's organization. So, again, coming back, it's still daunting. You're still raging against the percentages. 3 key things. None of these are ours, by the way. They're all syndicated from the outside-in views, but we can validate them as well. We see the same thing. Principles of effective industrial AI, so what constitutes a good chance of making the 4% or 5% rounding error in the big picture of those who are getting real economic value. Number 1 is deterministic grounding of the data. Garbage in, garbage out was the old saying during machine learning, deep neurals. Applies exactly in large language models or foundation model era. Nothing has changed in that sense. Garbage in, garbage out, especially when you are applying AI. And when I say AI today, I mean today's modern generative AI era, agentic AI, not conventional machine learning. You need to, or typically you aspire, you want that AI to understand your data, to solve for your needs, understand your asset operations, your organization, your people, your priorities, not be generic, whatever happens to float around the public internet. For that to be true, for that to happen, and for that to be non-hallucinating, you need to be able to ground the AI into your data. You need a deterministic grounding. So don't just use an LLM, don't just sprinkle it on whatever, but you actually need a structured data foundation, such as a knowledge graph or an ontology, as other people call it, or some other form. A graph is a very context-rich, context-dense format that serves AI, agentic workflows beautifully. Not just us saying it, you go and read Microsoft and everyone will say the same. You need deterministic grounding. Otherwise, you're in the hallucination land. And in our case, and in this context and this case, the AI is used merely, that's a simplification and undermining the actual value, but it's merely a means to access the deterministic knowledge bases. The answers don't come from the AI. They don't come from the LLM. But that's a black box. It'll always be. It's deterministic by nature. The reason we like and feel that AI is so human is that it hallucinates. It's a feature. It's not a fault. They're dream machines. They're statistically geared to find the most probable, plausible thing to spit out if you expect the result to come from the LLM itself. If you ground it and use it as an access gateway to deterministic data sets, then the data is governed, compliant, verifiable, trustworthy, deterministic. You merely simplify access to very complicated data structures by using agentic and AI. Value-driven. Start with value. If there's no value, no point. Just don't invest in AI for the sake of AI, even though it's cool. There has to be a use case of value. People need to want to use it and only then pursue. Nothing has changed in this. It's been the same mantra for a long time. Nothing has changed. It's just AI is the new tool, the new hammer. Same principle remains. There needs to be quantifiable value that you're pursuing. Otherwise, AI is not going to magically, metaphysically manifest value for you if you don't have a value goal in mind. And you need to think human-centric. Today, tomorrow, for the foreseeable future, yes, everyone aspires to autonomous enterprise, autonomous industry. But today, for the next 2, 3, 4 years, hard to put timescales on things with the speed of things, you do need to really think human-centric. How do you put the human user in the center of your AI? How do they become the users? Apologies for that. How do they become the drivers? How do they become the beneficiaries? And you need to make it intuitive and easy. A chatbot is kind of cool, but it's actually not the workflow that people want. You need to think about workflows. How do you enable workflows? This came out, I think, yesterday or the day before, a couple of days ago. So we've been at this for a while, getting recognized now all over. But we didn't start yesterday either. This is November 23. So we published our first book on this topic in November 23, by which time we had already been pursuing AI for industry and AI and looking to become the leader in industrial AI for a good 12 months almost running. We started experimenting, playing with it, toying with it in our Cognite labs, as we called it back then, very late 22. By spring 23, we were full on, all in, all eggs in one basket. Turned out to be a good bet. Similarly, from outside in, leading industrial analysts, IDCs, and Verdantexes, they all kind of put us at the upper right-hand corner. And these are both, by the way, on industrial data management platforms, whether you call it industrial data ops or whether you call it something industrial data management, going back to the data grounding. The AI is AI. You really need to have the deterministic grounding in place for that to become trustworthy. If it's not trustworthy, your subject matter experts will not trust it, they're not going to use it. This is us in a nutshell. Cognitive diffusion, the platform, the belly of the whale, like we talk about it oftentimes internally, remains the bedrock. That's what we do, that's what we build, that's what we've invested most of our engineering resources, time, material, sweat and tears and blood for many, many, many years. Well, not that many, we're 9 years of age roughly. But that's where it still happens. That's where rubber hits the road. On top, Atlas AI is the agentic workbench capability layer with the tooling and other stuff that we provide, out-of-the-box agents. And then the newest release, very recently, last week, is Cognitive Flows. That touches upon the human-first experience, allowing users, humans, to build experiences that really resonate with them and making that dead easy. Whilst retaining the industrial pedigree, it has to be trustworthy, verifiable, authentic, has to actually work in real life. Building a website is like, okay, doesn't really matter if it works or not, but if you're looking to manage actual production operations, it does. So that's Cognitive Flows. What it looks like is this. So you can create adaptive experiences. It's not groundbreaking in a sense. Those of you who have been following AI, it was in the timeline as well. Like Claude Code, Cursor, Replit, Lovable, they all do this generally. But if you want it to be natively grounded to industrial data and those capabilities and provide hallucination-free experiences and all offer a level of convenience, that's what we are doing with it. Also in good fashion, we announced it a week ago roughly, but we've actually had a private preview with select customers globally on it for a good while. So by the time we took it to market and announced it, we already had 50 customers deployed, more than 130 applications built and running, and more than 100 developers certified. So that's the speed at which things move today. Going back, so it's kind of delivering on this piece here, but making that actually applicable to the industrial enterprise context. Now, the question for you to ask, the question for everyone to ask is really, do you want to be in the 5%? And I'm rounding it, I'm kind of being kind. It was 4% statistically, but I'm making it 5, so it's a nicer number. But like, how do you become part of the 5%? The odds are really low. How do you become part of the 5%? And again, the tagline below here, I should have put in credit to McKinsey, it's their quotation. It reads, the elite group of companies successfully scaling AI in 26 have moved away from experimental AI towards agentic workflows. So essentially, they're not looking at a chatbot. By the way, there will not be an omnipotent chatbot that answers everything. That's not the reality. That's not what's going to happen. So as a chatbot, it's a really awkward, clunky interface if you need to execute workflows. It's good for Q&A, troubleshooting, but it's not a workflow surface. Agentic workflows, flows, Cognitive Flows, hence the name, right? So we're trying to do something to simplify our own existence as well. It was called codename Dune for a long time. So, but then we felt that we might get sued by Hollywood if we use that name publicly, so it became Flows. And of course, there's other reasons, but that's the actual factual one. Think about workflows. How do you apply AI natively into workflows? What can you do to change workflows in your company? How do you make them intuitive for your users? And the litmus test is that your users need to want to use it. If they don't want to use it, no point. This is AI. Your field workers will always find a reason why it's not trustworthy or good enough if they don't want to use it. The beauty of this is very much like consumer stuff, applications. By the way, I started my career in mobile gaming, so I come from the consumer side in that sense. They're the same thing. If people don't want to use it, they're not going to use it. You can, of course, force people to use something, tons of resistance. You can throw in consultants to do change management, tons of resistance. They'll always find a reason why it doesn't work or why it's not applicable or why this or that. If instead you put the human, the user at the center, you really genuinely ask them what they would like to see, what kind of workflow improvement would make their life easier, you'll get them to buy in. The beauty of building the workflows agentically, like with Cognitive Flows, it takes about half a day to build an application, to have it be visible and tested, so you can test it. It takes about a week, 2 weeks to harden it if you have the right backend, the data foundation in place, and then you hit the ground running. It doesn't take months anymore. It doesn't take quarters anymore. So that time has been compressed. There was a slogan we were using in early 24 at some of our global conferences called, "Your sentence is the application." And back then, people were like, that's very futuristic. I'm not a software developer, and I can write an application with 1 sentence and 15 minutes of time. The 15 minutes is, by the way, inactive time. I can drink coffee during the time. Is the agentic swarm is cooking up the application before it spins it up. That's today. Coming back to value, I know I'm on time, so I wanted to point out one thing again, outside in, delivering value. Exactly the same report, exactly the same external house doing it, 22 to 26. A little bit more value, so very happy that they find even more value. The only thing that has really changed in Cognite is agentic AI was added. So binary. Payback period went from 14 months to less than 6 months. That's the speed. So if we really think about what has changed, speed. We can do things a lot faster, but it also means that those who are not doing things or who don't want to do things, the gap is growing faster. If you have time, if you're not on vacation mode yet, in about a month's time, on 17th of June, we're hosting a little Impact World Tour event here in Oslo. Impact is our annual flagship conference that takes place once a year in Houston. Was about 800 people last year there. Now we're doing a little world tour series, so it'll be smaller, scaled down. You're most welcome. Join, cost nothing, come, listen, learn. Have a couple of customers, actually, Amprion is speaking from the power segment from Germany, so they're coming over and sharing their learnings and experiences. So, and there's other customers speaking as well, but that's just relevant for you here. So join us, learn, challenge, question. It's a super fun space to be in. Energy and AI coming together. It's super exciting. Time is now. I've had a good 7+ years at Cognite. I expect to have a few more years of greatness ahead as well and great times. So I appreciate the time today. Thank you genuinely for having me here. And that's it. If any questions, please do ask.